All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the Kansas Materia Cup. So the previous video that we did on the Kansas Materia Cup was kind of titled Attack the Meta. This is just going to kind of be like a little series that we do that really focuses on the state of the metagame before, after, kind of around organized play, just in general. Whether it's before Materia Cup, after Materia Cup, whatever. We're going to typically talk about like some predictions and stuff like we did in the first video and go over just general concepts for decks. And then I always find it interesting to go back and kind of see what we thought was going to be prevalent and what ended up being prevalent.
So see how wrong we are.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's the thing, because honestly, the one thing that I don't think we mentioned at all in the previous video was Wool 7. And I think I personally could chalk it up to myself knowing that just typically in Final Fantasy, the past several sets and opuses and just general formats have typically been good stuff comes out, better stuff comes out, people forgot about the good stuff, and it's still good. Like, there's nothing wrong with soirees coming out in 16 and something new coming out in 17. Soirees were still good, right? They never got any worse, right? There's not been any bans. There's not been any direct counters printed to stuff like that. So I think it's just a classic. I just didn't think about Wool 7 being as prevalent, even though it literally got new tools, and we can see that in some of these lists here. So this is actually a chart that Ready Check Radio had put together, and I think he posted it on Facebook or somewhere. And I find it very interesting because it shows kind of a breakdown of almost what did best in Swiss, right? So if you look at like the top 32, right? So we're looking just in that top 32 column. You have 7 night decks that entered into top 32, meaning that room was full of knights, and knights were kicking ass. Now, you can see they quickly dwindled away. 0 knights made it to the top 8. 5 of them lost their first best of 3 in top 32. So very, very interesting that knights obviously do really good in blind Swiss, but it kind of struggles if you know what you're going up against. Kind of easier to mulligan into an answer, or whatever you need, whatever your deck's answer is to knights. It's very easy to kind of just set up into that next deck, right? I can't remember. Did you see any knights play on stream? I can't remember now if there were any on there or not. I don't think there were. Like even day one in Swiss, I don't remember seeing knights anywhere.
Wasn't Hunter Nance on Knights Day 1?
He was, but do you remember seeing him play?
Yeah, because what did he play against? It was the second. It was round 2,
That's
if I'm not mistaken.
that's right, because he ended up he had double Amats in hand that one game,
Yes.
and he Kucha laned something. I can't remember if he Kucha laned a Refia. I can't remember, but that I think that kind of goes to show how powerful knights can be. If you play Final Fantasy TCG, there's a very good chance that you've purchased cards from Nerd Labs already. Nerd Labs has nearly 2,000 completed sales in just over the last 11 months or so, with overwhelmingly positive feedback. We're on TCG Player, but just as a little hint, if you follow the link in the description, there's no price floor when prices are updated on a daily basis. Always happy to support the stack. Let's get back to the video. I did get the last few pieces of the Knights deck in the mail today, and I just kind of goldfished around. And let me tell you, it is very, very nice to ditch one to play the Beatrix, activate Beatrix, ditch 3, one of which is Karilla, to play Ramza, and then Ramza brings back Karilla. Karilla reveals 5 and plays 2 more forwards on the field. That right there is 5 forwards for basically 8 CP.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's super super crazy. And then Ramza's online because his action ability is dull for active knights. Doesn't have to be a tap ability. It's active as soon as you have 4 job knights on the field, which is pretty nice. So anyways, knights obviously being huge out in the top 32 quickly dwindled down. I think there's gonna probably be a time where knights end up getting this sort of Final Fantasy 13 treatment. Like, a lot of people are toting knights as the new 13, and oddly enough, even Leon mentioned how he's kind of jealous about knights because they have all those like little pieces that 13 has, but it kind of does it slightly different and in some ways better. But you know, I mean,
synergy.
Yeah, in Opus 19 meta, like, we knew that 13 was going to be super huge, but it was just so few and far between that we saw him do really well at a competitive tournament. And I think some of that goes back to people were just really like teching for it. The hype around Opus 19 Starter Lightning was huge, right? Everybody knew that card was the boogeyman, so they obviously started teching for it. People were playing. I personally was playing stuff like Night Dancer and trying to find ways to prevent 13 from getting off 3 attacks. People were playing Opus 6 or Opus 14 6 CP Levy a lot more prevalently. You just saw people putting in answers to stop lightning. And it wasn't until Steven Sauce actually won Raleigh with it. And from there, it kind of proved that 13 could be good. But if you notice the evolution of those decks, it seemed like everybody was like all in on 13 and trying to play it as a all-in aggro deck. Whereas Steven Sauce, when he actually won Raleigh, it was more of like a honed in 13 deck. He still played 13, 14, 15-ish backups. He still played like 8 or 9, 10-ish summons. Like, he was actually playing like a ratio deck that made sense. He wasn't like all in on all the forwards and yada yada yada. So maybe that's what Knights needs. Maybe it needs the treatment of like finding its actual footing and figuring out what is the best set of backups to run. What is the correct ratio of backups? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 12? Is it going to be 15? Whatever. So I think that's an interesting deck. And playing, just goldfishing it, I fell in love with it. It was just really, really interesting to play.
Yeah, I think Knights is pretty cool just because it has access to some of the best summons there are.
Yeah.
Just missing Earth, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully,
you got the Kuchele, and you got all the Leviathans, and you got Amats, and all kinds of good stuff there.
Yeah, and it's interesting because being able to, if you did pull it back, right? I mean, like, most of the flavors that you're seeing now are going to be the tricolor. They're going to be fire, water, and ice. And ice is obviously there to play the Charlotte and the Laswell. Those are like your 2 big ones. I've seen people playing Phasalis. I get it, but I'm just not on it as much. But having access to those 2, Laswell and Charlotte, is really good. But maybe that's what Knights doesn't need. It doesn't need those, because then if you take out the ice package, and I've even seen people playing Renoa, so that you could flicker your Karilla. Like, I mean, there's very, very interesting builds out there, but maybe the ice could come out to make room for some more tech slots in terms of Brynhilder or 6 CP Levy or what is it, Opus 18 levy that cancels an auto. I mean, like, having all those auto cancels would be crazy in certain matchups, right? Especially in the mirror. I don't know. That could be very interesting. So yeah, I can't say enough about Knights at this point. I'm very excited to play it at locals this week. So I guess on to the one that we didn't mention at all, Wool 7. Being very, very prevalent. There was 3 traditional Wool 7s, 3 Wool 7s that had Cat 8, and 1 Warriors Wool 7, which for all intents and purposes is basically mono fire. Like, the way that we saw him play it on stream definitely felt like a mono fire type of setup, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I thought it was great. Like, there was nothing wrong with it. And obviously he did good. He made it all the way to top 8. Yeah. I still think Montleonis is one of the better limit breaks that we've gotten. Or it's one of the better payloads, at least. So, Wool 7 obviously still stupid good. I mean, very similar style, I guess, to the Knights in terms of how it, like, swarms the field. The only difference is that Knights is obviously honed back a little bit. You can only grab up to 4 CP worth of forwards. You can't grab like a 4 CP, or you can't grab like 2 4 CPs. You can only grab a 2 and a 2, or a 1 and a 3, or something like that. So it can't swarm as quickly as Wool 7, but Wool 7 definitely, off of one backup, can basically just outpace most other decks right now. I think Steve D said that it was, he would basically refer to it as a mid-range deck, even though it seems like by turn 2 or turn 3 they're already set up and like fully on board with whatever they're supposed to be doing, whether it's to play the Gilgamesh FFBE or just to curve out and have a setup of backups or whatever. Like, they're already there, right? By turn 2 or turn 3, they're set up, which for mid-range is a little bit, dare I say, aggressive, but it's very in line to set up very quickly and just be ready. So the interesting one to me, of course, since I am the huge Cat 8 fan, was the one that actually won. So the Wool 7 with Cat 8 essentially was a Ice Lightning Wool 7 deck. So if you think Wool 7 is light, you have Ice, you have Lightning. That's 3 different elements. And then you toss in the 4-color Wool for your special fodder. You're still at your 7 elements to get your Gilgamesh FFBE online. So you literally could trim a lot of the fat out of the deck and stop trying to do as much like gimmicky stuff with it. Like, playing the Realm and bouncing the Wool 7 is cool to then replay it next turn. And like, you could go super, super wide. But why do that when I could just play Seifer, Fujin, Raijin, and Adia, and I can just mill myself enough to get those 7 elements? Because to me, one of the worst things with Wool 7 was actually getting that light CP in the break zone. So
yeah,
if you have a way to turbo that, then why not do it, right? I think
I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I definitely, and like, he was playing God, I can't even remember which Opus it comes from, that Lightning backup Red Mage. It just like looks at the top, like, reveal cards until you reveal. It's either like a earth or a fire, water or something. Like, he just has to reveal until basically he reveals 4-color Wool and then adds it to hand. Like, that's just ridiculous. And there were so many combats that he went into battle phase, and just as he went in, he just immediately specialed and just started swinging. Like, he didn't care at all. He was just like, yeah, whatever. I don't care what EXs you pop. I don't care what all you get. Like, doesn't matter to me. and like it just runs over so many things. Like it's really, really interesting how hard it can hit when it does go off.
Yeah.
And like your Gilgamesh FFBE being able to duel and freeze, attack 3 times at best, Seifer being able to break stuff. I mean, Seifer is essentially online by like turn 2 because you're basically worst case scenario you're ditching 4 for cat or for wall 7, and then from there if you play Seifer you're gonna mill 2 and then add 1 back, so you've just hit 5, and then from there you just play a Fujin or a Raijin and you're already at 7. I mean, it doesn't take long at all to start milling cards in that deck.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty neat concept there.
Yep. So I would have, if I would have remembered Wall 7, I definitely would have mentioned it, but I wouldn't have even come close to mentioning Wall 7 and Cat 8 together. I wouldn't have even thought of that.
No. I wouldn't either.
Now, the Warriors Wall 7 deck, I played against him in the Materia Cup. I mean, in the Winter Cup, if I'm not mistaken. He did run over me. I do remember that very well. Very good deck, very good player. So I do remember that. And obviously, that deck performs very well, making it to top 8. So nothing to scoff at with the Warriors package either.
Yeah.
So another one that I don't think we were even like close to thinking about was Ice Lightning either. Whether it's just the
I didn't even think of that being there. I just always feel like it's just too slow. It's really setup-y, and I just felt like it wouldn't have time to set up, which is kind of crazy because some of these decks are setup decks. So,
yeah, which I mean,
that's
it's crazy. If I can remember correctly, they were talking about how that Ice Lightning deck, the only new cards from Opus 22 that it was playing were in the Limit Break deck, which is absurd. Yeah, like they're literally just playing like Opus 21 probably. I can't even think of anything out of Opus 21 that like jumps to the front of my mind that goes in Ice Lightning. I mean, maybe Rug if you're that guy, but I don't know. That's very, very interesting that Ice Lightning did as well as it did. But if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because 4-color Wool is kind of the only thing that runs over Ice Lightning right now, just because of Refia, right? So Ice Lightning, it's kind of detrimental if I tap my Knights and then you start Dull and Freeze and everything, because now I can't do my Knights thing anymore, right? And what I have found with Knights is even though you're playing this massive amount of forwards, you do kind of have a name issue in certain areas that kind of makes it a little bit wonky from the gold fishing that I've done. So, and that just could be bad luck, and it probably is bad luck, truthfully. But Ice Lightning definitely performed, and it's very interesting to see that it did perform with very, very little new stuff. And maybe all it needed was the Limit Break. Maybe Cloud really is that good in Limit Break. Maybe Surges and maybe Victoria are really that good. Like,
it could be because that extra Dull and Freeze.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, right? Because you're gonna swing. That's fine. I'll take a damage, but then next turn I'm gonna tap one and ditch one to bring out Surges to freeze it, and then you can't do anything for next turn. Like, that's not bad.
And then also with the Alcid out there, you'll get the effects off of that too.
Exactly. Like that's really good. So, I mean, Ice Lightning really showing that it doesn't need much to perform well. It just basically needs a good pilot. And with a good pilot, it can literally make it to a top 16. So Chaos Arc, of course, I kind of expected that. I think we talked about that at the very end of the video, where Chaos Arc was going to be possibly a really nice anti-meta choice. Like, if you think about Chaos Arc, truthfully, like, 4-color Wool is going to be obviously really good. Wool 7 gets a little bit better in some scenarios. Like, the original Wool 7 was kind of playing a lot of different colors and a lot of different, just different things that kind of set it up to be a really big chaos target. But now, if it's more in line with like Ice Lightning Wool 7, you're really only going to be on like three different colors for most of the game. Which is kind of the same thing with Knights, right? So if Knights are on Fire, Water, and Ice, you're really only on three colors, which Chaos in turn costs 5 at that point. So it doesn't feel horrible to play Chaos for 5 CP. I mean, obviously, if you're snatching something from their side of the board, that's still not bad at all. So I definitely thought Chaos Arc was going to be a good. I don't really want to call it an anti-meta pick because it's not. But I definitely thought it was a good anti-Wool pick. And as big as Wool was in Italy and all the store championships that we looked at had some sort of 4-color representation. So that made sense.
Yeah. Not bad, though.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I remember there being a Earth Water variant that we saw on stream. Did we see another one? Like, did we see the other? Was it Earth Water or was it Mono Lightning? I can't remember.
I can't remember. I remember seeing like a Earth Water, and I'm pretty sure I seen him ditch an Arc because he had to discard because all of his cards were high costed or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm
There were
pretty
multiple
sure
games.
It was Earth Water.
There was the game that Tori was in where that guy was playing Chaos Arc, and they were both discarding to hand size like multiple times.
Yeah, I think that was the one.
That is just hilarious to me. I mean, that we'll get to the monsters deck, but that just proves how much like draw power and raw like castability that monsters deck had. And we'll talk a little bit about why I think that monsters deck was able to draw a lot more than it normally would. So Mono Earth and Mono Water. So very interesting because Mono Earth versus Mono Water specifically that we saw, I believe was Will Coghill and Ryan Chen. And that was probably the most exciting match that I remember out of the entire event. Like, I don't know why I love that match so much, but that match alone was just so, like, I was on the edge of my seat multiple times, and I will just go ahead and say it now. I was not a fan of watching Wool 7 do Wool 7 things as a spectator. Like, I understand the deck. I see what it does. I know how it's going to, like, do its lines to get to where it's going. And the first time I saw the Cat 8 build, I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of interesting. But then for whatever reason, every single game that it popped up, as a spectator, I was just kind of like, all right, whatever. And I just like kept working on something else. But for whatever reason, Mono Earth versus Mono Water, I was just glued to that game. I was like, this is back and forth. It felt like a really solid match. And I loved it. So, being that these are the two pillars that you kind of stand on, I'm really interested to hear your take on this match in particular.
I thought that match was probably just like you said, it was one of the best. I don't know, dude, because I love Mono Earth and I love Mono Water. I think I would lean more towards the Earth, even though Mono Water took that. Mono Earth still had those lines, and I think that was possible just because of the Leo. In the version I run a more monster heavy version where I run the other Leo that'll bring back according to how many ever FCC characters you have, and I just use it to loop the Mira and Zombie, basically to stall and stuff like that. But that Mono Earth had a little bit of monsters, but I think it was the Zombies basically just to recur Leos and what's the Sushano or whatever? It's the
Suzuhiza, yeah.
The one Suzuhiza. Yeah, that was pretty cool, and being able to cast Word of Light, that was insane, and that was like multiple times. It was very easy for him to do that.
Yeah,
which was pretty crazy. And I think that is why he was able to keep up with the mono water so much. Just the mono water was gaining so much CP with the free backups, which he was too. But I don't know, just being able to cast the Tidus multiple times in a game, and then casting the other Leo, the water Leo from your limit break deck, getting extra CP there. It, I don't know. I like the mono
Yeah.
earth, but the mono water was pretty dope too.
Yeah, so like I feel like the big difference between those two decks come down to the limit break, right? So if you think about
Hmm.
what Mono Water did is he multiple times in two separate games out of that match, he casted Tidus twice, right? In two separate occasions.
Hmm.
And I think that is what set Mono Earth back so far because it's just so backbreaking to lose that backup, lose that forward, and then I get to draw two cards, right? So the way that Ryan was doing it, it was playing the Una first to reduce the Tidus by 2, meaning he was paying, instead of 5 CP to cast the Tidus, he was only paying 3, and then he was having to pay 3 as it was casted, meaning he was paying 6 total rather than 8, which means he's basically making 6 or paying 6 CP and drawing 2 cards. So he's effectively only losing 2 CP to cast Tidus, but you're also losing a forward, a backup, right? So you are being set back really
Hmm.
far while I'm only truthfully set back 2 CP, right? So, and
Yeah.
actually, technically, we're adding a summon back from break too off of the Una. So technically, we're not losing anything, we're actually coming
Yes.
out at a net 0. So the
And you
Tidus
have the
in
forward.
yeah, and you have now two bodies on field, right? You have the Yuna and the Tidus, which is just bonkers. On the flip side of that, you do have Shantoto, right? Shantoto makes a huge difference. But the problem is
Hmm.
that A, it cost 9 CP total, and B, you could only do it once. So
Yeah.
Tidus is just going to outvalue that situation. Like obviously, yeah, if I'm playing Mono Water and you are playing Mono Earth and you Shantoto me, yeah, it's gonna set me back. It's gonna hurt. But if I already had 3 or 4 backups, that's fine. It's probably gonna take me a turn or two to rebuild. But you just lost everything. And you only have a Shantoto on board. So now you have to rebuild as well. And in that
Yes.
type of situation where I have the more valuable plays, it feels like Mono Water is just going to rebuild faster. So it it was just a really really interesting match. But my favorite thing that happened is a yes, he did cast Wool like 2 times. I remember specifically 2 times. He tapped 1 for Leo and then tapped 4 for Wool, restood everything up, and then it draw. It's just that's hilarious to see in Mono Earth alone. But my favorite thing that he did was he had Sophie in hand at one point and he ditched Sophie. We're talking Earth Water Sophie, right? He ditched it and then he ended up having enough on board at some subsequent turn to play Montleonis for a very small cost, right? I think he had to pay 4 for it. But he pays 4, one of which the cards that he discarded was the new Qatar Bashtar. He ditched that, played Montleonis, targeted the Qatar, pulled the Qatar back, and then targeted Sophie. All while Mono Water is on 6 damage. If he didn't have an answer, he literally had the Opus 18 Levy to stop that auto ability from firing, or he would have brought Sophie in and just passed turn and won. Like,
Yes.
that was one of the most genius lines that I saw all weekend. And I think that is what made me love that match so much because it was just two people like fighting back and forth, but it felt like some sort of like Jedi lightsaber war or some shit. Like, I've never even seen Star Wars and it felt like that. Like, it just felt like some super climactic sword fight. And I loved it. I loved that match. It was so cool to sit there and watch. And all the
Yeah,
while I'm
for
sitting there
sure.
like I'm sitting there telling Rigo, I'm like, oh, he's about to do this. Oh, he could do that. Oh, he's about to go here. And Carlos over there like, would you shut up? You act like you're actually playing. I'm like, I am playing. I am in this match. Like
Yeah,
I
it was
loved it.
really awesome. Yes, and
I
it almost
definitely
felt like
feel
mono water was like mono wind. Like it was like it was almost seemed like that one round. It was like almost like a cast count because he did Titus like back to back turns almost. It was like
yeah.
almost like he was doing Luso or something. It was insane.
Yeah, yeah. It was if you didn't see that match, you have to go watch it. Like that was just chef's kiss, just perfect Final Fantasy TCG for me. I
Yeah,
also
it
have to
was
agree.
amazing.
I think the Mono Earth seems more up my alley than Mono Water does. Although the Mono Water deck definitely feels like it does. I feel like 9 times out of 10, it's probably the better pick in that matchup. Like, I feel like Mono Water does
Yeah,
pretty much like outvalue Mono Earth in a lot of scenarios. I don't know. That's just like me, who's not a Mono Earth or a Mono Water player, looking at it from the outside in.
yeah,
So then, I guess we can go ahead and talk about Refia Wall because I was kind of waiting to get to that point because I think like if you look at all of the Refia Wall and the Bart's walls above, I think these kind of clump into the same style of deck ultimately. Like Bart's Wall is doing what Refia Wall does. It's just they approach it in two separate ways. Refia Wall is just about having 4 colors that get to Refia and have some sort of setup to where Refia can use her action ability to dull 4 to slide something under, put something on top of the deck, whatever. Bart's Wall does it the basically it's the same end result. It's just getting there a different way by using the new Opus 22 Barts that has time magic, special pay X, bring out whatever cost X warrior light that you want. So they both basically do the same thing. But I thought this was going to be kind of like the big bad going into the weekend. I thought based on Italia, I thought based on the Italy Materia Cup that this was going to be what most people were trying to net deck. And maybe the room was a little different, but obviously in Top Cut we only had 4 of these, which is
yeah.
interesting. So I mean, I've been playing the deck for most of Opus 22 at this point. Um, I like it. I like the Bart's version better than the Refia version, or rather than the pure Warrior Light version. I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but I just think that it's more high rolly, and that's kind of more my style, of course. I like the versions that only play like 8 or 9 backups because it gives more room for more forwards, more names, or more summons, whatever you're really going for. But that's just me. That's my style of play. So obviously, coming up to being in the finals is a big deal. Bart's Wall being, I mean, it pretty much showed its legs, right? And I personally think that in that finals matchup, if the Bart's Wall didn't draw so back-footed to begin with, it would have been a little bit closer. I still do think that Wool 7 with Cat 8 kind of just had it in the bag. I mean, it definitely was a very hard 2-0 to watch, just because of how like Wool 7 and Cat 8 catapult to the end game so quickly. So ultimately, though, I mean, I think the Bart's Wall and Refia Wall were definitely big presence in the room. It definitely seemed as though, and I think it had to be fairly prevalent because Chaos Arc did really really well. Earth Water Chaos
Hmm.
Arc can stand on its own. For by no means does it need 4 colors on the opposite side, but either way, I definitely think that it's still something that we're going to continue to see for the rest of the format, and I think Bart's wool will only get better as we kind of figure out what the right number of Barts is, what the right number of backups are, because there is a pretty heavy deck building cost to playing the Bart's wool, right? I think that's the downside to that, but like I said, play a very low amount of backups in the deck to begin with, and that's kind of my trade-off, right? I play the low amount of backups so that I can add in those extra copies of Bart's for doing whatever. And I mean, I think there's a video on the channel where I actually pulled out Opus 7 Bart's and got that special off. Something that, is not supposed to be done in a normal setting, but it's the option, so why not go for it? So, I don't know. I mean, being on the opposite side of the table from Bart's and Refia, I mean, what do you feel like you got to do to combat them? Like, how do you stop Refia?
You literally got to outpace it, and then you got to have an answer for it. Like summons, really. It's kind of hard to stop it. Because especially when they pass turn with 4 standing warrior lights, it's like, damn, you got to top deck a summon because even if you do have something that has an entering ability, it's going to get top decked because you're going to target the Refia and they're just going to dull 4 and just go bye-bye.
Yeah.
So it's just a trade. And then there you go. They got 2 other ones in the deck. Or, it's pretty hard because you kill one. It to me almost feels like when I was playing Warrior Light back against Warrior of Light's Wool, good stuff in Opus 19. It's like, dude, I'd kill for one fucking Wool, and then the next thing you know, here comes another one.
Yeah, I mean, what was that? What was that game that me and you played where you were playing Fire Lightning 13, and you literally got rid of 3 4-color walls. Like you Larkishist one of them, you Medined one of them. It's like that threat that you can't get to go away.
Very hard. And it's worse when you got Warrior of Light and Refia together, but you've got to answer the Refia.
Yeah.
I think Warrior of Light's you're just going to take the damage and just try and figure out how to deal with it. But Refia, you've got to deal with that.
Yeah.
And, I remember way back when I was 19, when I got to top 16, it was top 16, and I played Sergio Garcia. And, dude, I was on Monsters, but I was on a Crystal variant, and I literally killed his Warrior of Light 3 times in one of the... He 2-0'd me pretty quick, but the one time I killed his Warrior of Light 3 times, and he just kept being able to bring it back, recurring it. It was just super hard. And I feel Refia is that way as well. And especially if you're playing the Bart's version, because then you can just Bart special another one straight out.
Yeah. I don't necessarily have to be set up, and I don't necessarily care that I get to tap 4, untap those same backups and draw a card. It's not about that at that point. It's just about having a body on the board that you can't deal with. Yeah. If I create this problem, I'm now putting the ball in your court. You have to find a way to deal with it, or else I'm just going to run you over, right?
Yes.
It's very, very backbreaking in some scenarios.
Basically, board wipes is about the only thing you can do, and that's basically mono earth. So,
yeah, I don't remember. I can't remember who said it, but there's you're either in a Shadow Lord type of meta or you're in a Titan Lord of Crags type of meta. I definitely feel like right now we're in a Shadow Lord type of meta, right? You've got Knights running around, you got Warrior Lights running around. Very, very prevalent for Shadow Lord to come in and just name a job and break him,
Yeah. It is pretty crazy.
So moving on, we do have an Ice Lightning Cat 8. I think that this was... I don't have a clue. This is going to take a second to find this. Ice Lightning Cat 8. Oh, this only has names. It doesn't have... yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to find that list as quickly as I want to. I'm pretty sure this is just going to be the standard Rug, Dawn, mill myself, and just overwhelm you with as much pressure as I can. Obviously, this is kind of another one of those scenarios where we like considered this the big bad. Like everybody knows that this deck is very, very prevalent and can run you over if you are not prepared for it. And I think that's why Earth has such a strong position right now, because it's just one of those decks that can mess with Ice Lightning Category 8 and very little effort is given to that. Mist Dragon, making it like... I really think there has to be some sort of like perfect read, or like they just knew what they were doing when they printed these cards, because the fact that Mist Dragon is the promo this year for this organized play season, like the entry prize is a freaking Mist Dragon. They knew what they were doing, right? So I mean, I think it's one of those things that everybody's kind of already teched for. It feels like that's a very similar situation to the Opus 19 Category 13 decks. So it's nice that one of them made top 32. It is a bummer that it basically lost in top 32, but I don't know. I'm partial because I love Cat 8, but I'm not at all worried that it lost. Like, I think I'm retired from that idea of taking it when we go to Chicago.
Yeah, that's just one of those decks you sit across from, and it's like, daggone.
Here we go again.
Like, yeah. Just like 13 was back in the day when they had the awesome opening hand that could just storm you, and it's like, okay, well, you got it, so that's it. I feel like that's the same thing. I'm not saying that's not a great deck. I mean, yeah, it's pretty good. But I also do feel like when it gets into the top sections, so you know what you're playing against at that point. So you know if you have one of those summons that's going to answer this, then you're going to want to mulligan into the answer because you know what it's going to do.
Right.
So that's... I have a feeling, so that's why it's not going to make it any further. But I think if there's enough of them, it would make it further.
Yeah. And I do want to call out, I can't remember exactly what game it was, but there was a guy who just took me, and even Leon was talking about it in the Discord, how like just insane his play was, where he drops the Dawn and has the Rug in hand, but he knows that he's playing Wool 7, so he just lets the Dawn sit there, right? And then opposing player plays Wool 7, and Dawn immediately gets to tap because he then casts Ramu to haste his Don Corneo, and then he taps it on the stack to then try to steal that Wool 7. Unfortunately, the guy had a special in hand, so he was able to basically protect it, which is very unfortunate. But just that alone, it took me by surprise. I was like, holy moly, that's very smart. Because if you go to play a forward that's going to deal with Dawn, or that's going to do something that is going to put me behind, guess what? I'm just going to haste it and steal whatever you just tried to do. Because next turn, I now get to play a different forward and Rug, and the forward that I just grabbed from you has been on my side of the field since the beginning of my turn, meaning I can now attack with it. So that's 4 attackers. And that doesn't include if I milled Fujin or Raijin, because if I mill Fujin and Raijin, that's 6 potential attackers.
That's insane. That
blew my mind when I was like, why didn't I think of that? That's so smart. But anyways, very, very interesting match with that as well. It kind of opened up my eyes to seeing a couple of other things that deck can do. I still think that it is very up my alley in the sense that it's a very high rolly deck, but I think it's just too high rolly for this type of setting. When we go into like a very high caliber Materia Cup, it's just not. It's too high rolly for me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So then, lightning water and wind lightning. I'm going to be honest. I didn't see these from what I can remember of the stream. I didn't see these at all.
No, I didn't see the one, so I'm not sure what lightning water does or wind lightning. The only thing that wind lightning brings to mind would be a ninja stick
Yeah,
to
the
me.
lightning
But I don't
water.
know. I would think it would say ninjas if that was the
I
case.
I'm wondering if lightning water would have possibly been like a cat 8 like they've been playing in Europe. I'm not honestly sure. I'd have to dig through these deck lists and find it. And of course, it's not on. Dude, rocking the freaking. I love it. He's Rudros over here with the notebook paper. I love that. Um. Anyways, I'd have to dig, and of course, none of this is on FFDex quite yet, so we're kind of doing this a little premature. But either way, I think mono fire, mono wind. The mono wind player, I do remember seeing him on stream. And you brought up something earlier today that I thought was interesting because he had Shinryu on board for multiple turns and I guess was kind of afraid to poke. I don't remember exactly what he was playing. Like, I don't remember if he was going up against something that he thought would have been very EX burst heavy. Maybe that's why he wasn't poking. But I can't
What he was
remember.
playing, but yeah, but I know he was able to poke with Shinryu, but he didn't. And I don't know, maybe he had a reason, and maybe he did a couple times. I just didn't see it, but I know that's. I feel like that's one of my biggest problems as a competitive player. There's a lot of stuff that I miss that I go back, even just watching us play, watching film and stuff. You know what we do is you go back and see the little simple things that you miss,
Mm-hmm.
and that can determine a game. Um,
Yeah.
Very much so, and I think need to work on that a lot.
Yeah.
And then I have had problems with not even activating my backups in my active phase, and I just go to start laying out cards, and I just skip right through it, and that's CP that I'm losing. And
Yeah.
in a competitive scene, they're not going to be like, "Hey, activate those backups." I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to tell you to do it.
Yeah. It's
And
it's it's one of those things where sometimes I wish my playmat had like a cheat sheet on it. Like
yeah,
like I'm just gonna put
it's
like
just
don't forget to activate your backups. You know.
mm, yeah, it's just like the rookie mistakes, which I mean, I know you get better with those. And for me in general, like we used to play Yu-Gi-Oh, and I never really played at the competitive scene at all. Just we did a little bit of locals sometimes, but then it was mostly just us playing each
Right.
other, just kind of like on the channel. This is the first time that I've actually been in a card game that I went and played competitively. So it's a lot to take in and to get used to, and just having different etiquette and stuff.
Yeah.
It's a lot different.
Yeah.
It, you got to pay attention.
Yeah. Maybe one day we'll talk about the one event we did try to go to for Yu-Gi-Oh. Because
Yeah.
that was a fun
Nervous.
time.
I was probably as nervous then as when I top 16 in Raleigh, and I was just sitting over there, my knee just going 100 miles an hour, and I'm like, dude, I'm sitting here, what the hell am I doing? I
Yeah.
don't know. And my hands, it happens. Like I know a lot of people keep it cool, but I just got super nervous, man. I don't know
Yeah.
why. And sitting there at
Yeah.
those top tables is like, dude, get it together, man.
Yeah.
Watch what you're doing. And I'm just fumbling cards and stuff, and I've gotten better at that by very a whole lot better. So,
Yeah.
but it does happen.
Yeah. Um, Mono Fire, I also don't quite remember if we saw that on stream either. I remember seeing the Warriors Wall 7 because I remember the commentators made comments about how it was, oh, basically we're watching Mono Fire. but like we knew that it was a Wool 7 deck, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't remember seeing Mono Fire, at least like in my brain. I can't remember seeing it, but
Unless it was that Wool 7, but heck, I don't know.
yeah.
That was the only
But
Mono Fire that I seen was the Wool 7 Mono Fire, but maybe that was it. I'm not sure.
so last but not least, and I saved it last for a very specific reason, is because it's monsters. It's kind of your wheelhouse, if you would. Obviously,
Yeah.
we have seen, watched, and kind of followed Tori Kelly in a lot of different events. Whether it was last year, we saw him at the Winter Cup in Raleigh, and we've kind of seen his monster deck kind of take a new form this go around. So I personally remember seeing him playing Firewater because he was really high on multi-element Furion, and it definitely like showed its strengths. Obviously, he took it. He had a top 4 finish at a Materia Cup last year, didn't he? Did he end up winning one? I can't remember if he won
I,
one.
I know. I'm pretty sure because I sat down across from him and played it with him, and I know he got his invite at Puerto Rico that one time as well.
Ah,
And then he topped at one of the other events. I'm pretty sure as well, one of the Materia Cups.
yeah, I remember him
We-
topping,
yeah,
and then like I remember seeing, and I remember him telling you about how like the goblins were good, like you got to get on the goblin package, this, that, and the other. And then
yeah,
if you like fast forwarded to the Winter Cup, we saw him playing basically wind, water, bounce, right? Like that's kind of what the deck is known for, like at this point. It basically plays the new Opus 21 starter Tidus, and then it plays just a whole bunch of stuff that just bounces things from your side of the field back to your hand. And, or I guess your opponent's side of the field back to their hand is a cleaner way to say that. I have it built. Only thing I'm missing is a couple of the realms, by the way. But the power of that deck is so interesting because it doesn't it doesn't necessarily like commit much to the board to disrupt yours. Like you can build a gigantic board with that deck, but it takes me 1 CP to play a Sahajin to bounce a 3 or less back on your side of the field. It
the
takes
draw card.
Tross. Yeah, it takes Tross to draw a card, and then if Tidus is there, I draw another card and I get a crystal. And guess what? I'm also playing Glaciella so that I can just start popping everything else that I can't bounce. So like
Yeah,
it literally outvalues you so well, and it disrupts you at the same time. And thinking about that deck, being able to not only do all that crazy stuff, but if you do manage to get rid of my 5 CP Tidus, I can just then limit break Tidus, right? Like it has access to like all these bonkers effects that are just really, really good. But the one freaking limit break card that we haven't talked about yet, which I think was the most important limit break card, arguably more important this weekend than Cloud was, at least on stream. I don't know exactly what happened off stream. I don't know how prevalent Cloud was off stream. But I felt like on stream, 3CP Leo was the most important limit break that we saw all weekend. There were a couple of
yeah,
times
it
where
was captured
even
very often.
yeah, there was a couple of times where even Mott or Matt or whatever you want to call him, he definitely showed his strides, giving everybody brave. There was a match, I can't remember which one it was. The guy casted Matt, and then like I guess he was just afraid to attack, and he did not attack. And even the commentators were like pulling their hair out. Leon was sending me messages, pulling his hair out. He was like, "Why aren't we attacking, man?" Like he had like 4 or 5 forwards on board with Matt, and he just didn't push for some reason. But Matt in that scenario shows how prevalent it can be because it's essentially I get to cast Matt, attack with all these forwards, and then still have everything active for your turn so that I can then block. And you made that exact comment to me, and it still didn't dawn on me until I saw it in action. So maybe I'm dumb, but that's phenomenal. That's very, very good.
Yeah, I made
But
that comment to you playing Matt in Refia to be able to attack with everything. Your Barts to then in your opponent's turn, dole them all.
yeah, which is just so good. And I
Yeah,
still even think, as good as that is, Leo still came out on top over the course of the weekend. I couldn't tell
very much
you
so.
how many times Leo was just used to just draw a card. If you go back and watch the match between Tori Kelly and that Earth, Water, Chaos Arc deck, he casted Leo and then proceeded to just lose Leo and was like, okay. And then casted another Leo. Like, it done
That's crazy.
so much work to just filter through cards because even if you're not on 3 backups, if you're only on 1 backup, that's fine. I'll tap 1 backup, get rid of this card I don't want in my hand to cast Leo to then just draw another card. Right? You are literally discarding a card and drawing a card with a 3K body on board now. You've
Yeah,
effectively filtered 1 card. And if you do have 3 backups, I'm just going to tap 3 backups to add another card to my hand. That's crazy. And I think that single limit break card was probably one of my favorite things to see do well this weekend. I thought that showed the potential for limit breaks and how prevalent they were going to be. Obviously, 4CP Cloud
yes,
is backbreaking to some decks, but I feel like Leo gets us deeper into the deck, and that's way more my style. I'm that guy that plays out my hand, and I go into top deck mode, and I always feel stupid for it. But now I have a limit break that lets me draw a card, and that makes me feel better.
yeah, yeah. That should.
So, sorry, that was a wild tangent for limit breaks. To get back to Tori Kelly's monster deck, we saw him evolve in from this like wind water bounce that he was playing at the Winter Cup to this go around in this Materia Cup in Kansas City. He's playing 3 color monsters. He's playing fire, water, and earth. You could arguably say he's playing 4 color monsters because he does play the Atomos and Everett. As far as I saw, I didn't see a way that he was actually casting any wind cards from what I can remember. I only remember him grabbing Atomos and Evray, or I don't even think he grabbed Evray at this point. Hang on, I can definitely find that man in here. Yeah.
I know he was doing the Goblin.
Yeah, he was on Goblins like crazy, and he had an absolute genius. Yeah, he's not even playing Evray, dude. No Evray. That's wild. And I have to believe that the reason he's playing the Earth package at all in this deck is literally just to get the Mist Dragon. Because otherwise, like, this is bonkers. He's playing the Matoya, which we did see. That's really interesting. Obviously, 3 Tyro makes really good sense. 3 Shantotos, or 2 Shantotos is really, really good. He is playing the Luminous Puma. What other Earth monster are we looking at? Do we have... Yeah, the Arimon. So we're basically only playing 2 Earth monsters. So it's not like we're like all in on Earth monsters, but he does have access to Bosch now, which is really good.
Which I believe he was playing this version during Opus 19.
Really?
I believe that's when he topped at whatever other event that he topped out. I remember he was playing something along the lines of this, pretty close. And then he went to the Wind Water because he was on the Goblin package when I played against him, but in Raleigh Materia Cup. But he was playing some other. He was trying to do Lady Lilith and some lightning monsters at that point in time when I played against him, and he was just testing some other deck that he was working on, and He said he didn't do so well with that at that point, but this is what similar he was on before. I'm sure it's got quite a few changes now that Limit Break and some other things came out, but
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I have to give the man credit because at one point, I remember seeing him. Let's see, he needed like 2 or 3 damage. I can't remember if it was 3. Maybe I think even at this point he might have even had a Leo on board, but he ends up playing something, and I can't remember what he played. He played a forward. He then cracked the 1 CP goblin that gives haste, right, and then draws you a card. He then proceeds to play Mira to then at damage whatever he was at, more than 1, which was only relevant. He then grabs the goblin from break and plays it back onto the field with Mira. And then he proceeds to crack the goblin to give Mira haste to draw a card. And then he attacks with all 3 forwards that he just freaking played and won. Like, that was just chef's kiss play. Like, that was just perfectly played out to where he just like it was just like he knew what he was drawing. He had it all lined up. It was just like, yeah, I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna crack the goblin. Yeah, I'm gonna play Mira. I'm gonna bring back the goblin. I'm gonna crack the goblin. I'm gonna attack 3. Like, it was just like perfect. It was just so seamless. Very, very, very cool play. Very interesting line. Almost as good as the Qatar Bashar line from earlier, but I still think that line was a little bit more spicy. So I definitely think that the monsters are still in full effect. I still think that they're one of those things that's hard to deal with no matter which way you slice it, right? Unless people are going to be playing some kind of mono wind, or I guess it doesn't have to be mono wind, but some kind of wind deck that's going to play King Tycoon and play Alexander, and it's just one of those things that's going to be interesting to play against monsters until we have a reliable way to deal with monsters. You can argue the new Limit Break Shantoto, whatever, that's fine. She does get rid of everything off the board, and I fully understand that, but I still don't think 9 CP is great when I'm already that far behind, right? Like, how do I just drop 9 CP to clear your board when obviously I have to have... If I'm in a position where I have to play the Shantoto, I'm in a position where you have already set up a fucking hell of a board, and I now have to just wait until I draw enough to cast the Shantoto. Like, I don't know. It's a little rough. There's still not a super seamless way to deal with monsters at this point. And until they print,
not too easily.
Until they print some kind of forward or, God forbid, a backup that you just like tap, pay X, and break a monster of cost X or something like that. Like, until we get something that does that, I feel like monsters are just going to be able to keep doing their thing. And it's just going to be you're just going to have to build a monster deck that deals with the current meta. Like, this monster deck makes sense to me because Fire Water gives Firion. I understand the Firion play. It's good. It's very easy to get to 5 characters in this type of deck, and you're just going to start generating value off of Firion. The turn that he comes in, if he attacks and draws you a card, he has paid for himself, right? That's good. I understand that. And being able to generate that value off of that is really, really good. Now, knowing that the Break Zone is going to be like a second hand to some of these other decks that, like Chaos Arc, having those arcs in Break Zone and being able to recur them is a very important part of that deck. Final Fantasy VIII, milling yourself so that you can add value from, these cards being in Break. Getting benefits off of X amount of cards in your Break Zone is huge. So having access to Earth in this monster deck makes sense so that you can play Mist Dragon, right? I think monsters could be tailored to fit any meta at this point. I don't think there's necessarily a wrong reason, or that didn't come out right. I don't think there's a reason not to play monsters. I think the reason is how good can you tailor it against the meta.
That's true.
So, I don't know. Very, very fun event to watch. Like I said, multiple times throughout day 2, I was on the edge of my seat. I was all but yelling at the TV as if I was watching some high caliber Super Bowl or World Cup tournament. I don't know. Is very, very fun to watch. First North American tournament of the year, of course, so it was very eyes heavy. I think I remember hearing Ready Check Radio say 200 plus at some points around the final match in the stream. So 200 plus viewers just on Twitch. That doesn't count like for all of the people that were actually at the event. So, Square, like they said on stream, I hope you're paying attention because obviously people are interested in this game. People want to play this game. It's very, very, very nice to have a decent sized community because Opus 19 being the first competitive season back was great. But not a single time that year did we see an event sell out in literally 58 seconds.
Yeah, it was nowhere near like that.
Yeah, this season is definitely proving to be one of the bigger seasons that I think the game may have ever seen. Sure. So, I know you said you haven't watched all of the matches, but do you think that your predictions from the last video in terms of what we were talking about, do you think anything was left on the table that you wished you would have talked about more? Or anything in that realm of thought?
Not really. I'm just shocked at some of the stuff that did do good, like the Wool 7 Cat 8, and even though we didn't mention anything about Wool 7, but never would have thought Cat 8 would have been in the Wool 7. Just pretty cool. Cool little stuff there. The Bards, I was expecting that.
Yep.
Ice Lightning, wasn't expecting that. I do really like it. It's just hard for me to play Ice Lightning. I just don't enjoy it that much, to be honest with you, to play it.
Yeah.
Other than that, everything looks pretty good. I do love how, like, top 32, look how many different decks are in there. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah, you're literally, obviously, first event of the year, you have these people that are like gonna go to their comfort zone and they're just gonna play what they're good with, right? They know that they're good with Ice Lightning. They know that they're good with Mono Water. They know that they're good with Mono whatever. It's their most comfortable deck. They're not gonna try to veer off like super deep into some uncharted territory. But then you get these people that are pioneers, like the very first people to pioneer a new / not necessarily new archetype like Knights. I mean, Knights have been around forever, but a new iteration of that archetype. A new iteration of Warriors of Light with Bards, right? You're getting these people that are setting the groundwork for what these decks are going to basically mold into something different by the end of the season. Like, if you take Hunter Nance, for instance, did we see him play much else until Worlds? Did we see him play much else other than Magissa? I don't think so. I can't remember him playing anything other than Magissa every time we saw him.
I know he was big on FF6, right?
He did play FF6 early in the season, I think, last year.
Yeah,
I
do those two.
Yeah, and then I think obviously at Worlds he was playing Magissa and Mono Ice, And I for sure thought, well, shit, he's basically like one of the pioneers of mono ice as it was, right? So he's bound to just be playing that. But no, he decided he's going to take something like Knights. It's a very flavorful pick, and maybe he's just trying it out because fuck it. He's already got his invite. Like, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't need to win. He's just going to play for fun. But obviously he made it to top 32 with a fun choice for him if that's the case. So he's pioneering this deck that for the next several events is going to slightly change and morph into something that becomes better and better and better. It's going to be more refined by the time we see it in Chicago. It's going to be more refined by the time we see it in Raleigh later this year, right? It's going to be one of those decks that started at the beginning of the competitive season and changed into something wildly different. I think that's really interesting. I like the pioneer aspect of some of these decks. People playing mono fire. Like, I can't remember last season. There was 0 mono fire last season that wasn't just Magissa, right? There was 0 mono fire unless you were playing Magissa. And that's crazy. Yep. Watch this mono fire guy be playing Magissa or some shit. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, I'm hyped for Florida. I'm hyped for Chicago. I can't wait to see the next event. Like, I just am really, really excited for it.
Heck yeah. I'm ready to play some more.
Yeah. So
even if we don't do good, it's still fun being there and meeting some pretty cool people.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you go to play, you go to win, you go to do good, you go to have like a decent standing. But like, I have yet to go to any of the events that we've been to. Everyone has always been so welcoming. It's just, dude, I used to play that, or hey, I love that. I can't tell you how many people talk to us just about different ideas that they've had for similar decks. Like, when I pulled out that Rug Paul deck at the Winter Cup, people were just like, dude, that's dumb. Like, that's so stupid. Why would you come up with that? Like, I love that feeling. It's like that borderline camaraderie, just because you have that like one thing in common, that you play this game, but people can recognize that there's just bonkers ideas out there, and they love to see those ideas just as much as you love to come up with them. And I don't know, that's just one of my favorite things about it. Like, I love building weird decks anyways, and to see people appreciate that is what makes it so enjoyable for me most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to get back out there. So, anything else you would like to say about the Materia Cup of Kansas City, the first one of the year?
I believe that's a wrap.
Yep.
We'll just look forward to the next one.
Yep. All right, guys. Hopefully everyone had a good time watching. If you haven't seen the games yet, of course, they are still on Collector's Cash's Twitch channel. They did actually save the VODs, unlike some other tournaments that we've had in the last little bit. So very appreciative that those VODs are still out there. I actually might go watch that Mono Earth, Mono Water game again right after this. So anyways, appreciate you guys hanging out and listening. Let us know what your thoughts are on the tournament. If you're going to a tournament, whether it be Florida, Chicago, or whichever one is after Chicago, what you thinking? Where are you thinking the meta is going to go? How are you going to deal with the meta? How are you going to deal with Wolf 7 at this point? Like, what can we just run 5 CP Fenrir like in all of our decks? Like, is that enough? No, because they're just going to special. But I don't know. Tell us what you think. I'd love to hear your opinions.
Yep.
All right. Till the next one, guys. See ya.
We'll see you.